Hi everyone, and welcome to our final deep session. It's very spontaneous. Eric and I are gonna sing a song. We practiced it, a part of it before the session, so it's very spontaneous. Yeah, it's called The Holy Instant.
We live forever in the holy instant, beginning now and reaching to eternity. An instant is all there is. It's all there is. Let us join together in the holy instant, here now forever is all there is of time. Seem to need 1,000 years can easily be done in just one instant by the grace of God, by the grace join together in the holy instant, here now forever is all there is of time. One instant out of time can bring time's end. In that one instant, you are healed, free of the past, with no future plans. An instant full of joy, an instant full of love, an instant full of light, an instant full of God. Let us join together in the holy sand. We live forever in the holy instant, that shining instant of perfect release. Here you remember God. Here you remember God. You will remember God. You will remember God. Thank you.
Thank you, Slava, Eric. Yeah, beautiful. We're all in the rhythm, the flow of it today. Yeah, that was the first time they ever sang that song together, so you got to hear it spontaneously. And yeah, that's what we're praying for, to live a spontaneous life, to be so in the present moment that it just comes through us, it's given to us without any planning, organizing, figuring out, analyzing. So relaxing. Talk about simple. That's what we're praying for. So Francis is joining us now. We're so thrilled to have Francis with us.
Hi everyone, I'm so happy to be here. We were so sparked this morning, just could hardly stop talking before the camera started to roll and the countdown is like, okay, you guys have to shut up now. We're so sparked by the questions you sent in, because there's a lot that wants to pour out, really. Mm-hmm. And we're so sparked because the answer we have found that needs to be shared. And I think, really the session and the topic of this weekend is so deep. You know, what David was talking about, and everything was just so deep. It's the underpinning of this whole world and all the conflicts, all the problems that come with it. So we're pulling the carpet in a way, but truly, it's not the problem and how the problem constructs itself that's our focus. We want to focus on the solution, which is within our reach, and that is the reason that we feel so sparked and so happy.
Yeah. We talk about prayer, and we say how important prayer is, because really prayer is the medium and the mechanism of miracles, and all of us have been conditioned so much into making decisions based on past learning that, that's just our method of operating in the world as a human being. What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the good points? What are the bad points? What are the reasons to do something? What are the reasons not to do something? So complex. It's very complex trying to pretend to be a human being instead of a spirit. We're the Christ, and taking on this huge complex game of ego pretense and believing things that aren't true. And I shared yesterday, about elections, where Jesus said, you have elected to be in time and space. It's a decision to believe that you're here. And then it's a decision to realize you're not. And that's as simple as it is to open to truth. Frances opened up today, before she came, she just opened up the course and the workbook, and your decision was, heaven is the decision I must make.
Yeah, I was actually, it's interesting because the Spirit clearly points us to talk about it, because I came over here, and before I left, I said, if there's one thing you want me to read before I come to the session, just guide me. And then I opened, and that is, heaven is the decision I must make, and talks about how the decisions in this world seem to be different, and yet they are the same. And also, maybe I should even read Isabel's question here, because she sent in a question that exactly around decision. So I'll just read it first. Hi, Isabel.
Hi to your mother. Hi to the cat. Welcome.
So Isabel sent in, Dear David, Francis, and everyone else in the Living Miracles community, when the theme for this online retreat, the illusion of time, was announced, it initially did not feel very relevant for me. The concept of time and non-linearity often feel too abstract to really resonate with me or be helpful to me right now. However, as the start of the retreat moves closer, some related topics and questions seem to be on my mind a lot. I find myself in a situation where I'm constantly confronted with thoughts concerning choice. I feel like I have to make the right choice, choose the most joyful option, be very clear about my choice to everyone involved, stick to the choice that I made, and so on. And as I heard Jason say in an old episode of From the Bottom Up last week, this idea of having to make choices inherently brings me a lot of guilt, because it comes from an ego sense of doing. So I try to hand it over and ask for guidance. But then I'm still confronted with thoughts like, this is taking too long. You cannot let everyone wait for your answer. If you don't choose now, you will lose the option to choose. And I notice myself thinking that if it is all given and I do not make any choices myself, I judge that as boring. Clearly, the ego never wants you to find peace, haha. I was wondering if you could speak on these topics of making choices, its relation to guilt and letting go of control, and specifically why I would want to do these things as a sort of reminder to what it is all for. Thank you so much.
Well, that's very practical. When Isabel, you're asking about decisions, and you're saying, I want to know how can I make this relevant and practical. And what I talked about yesterday was that the belief in linear time is the resistance to the light. It's the resistance to guidance. It's the resistance to God. It's the resistance to happiness. And so if you looked at practical decisions you make, like what am I supposed to do today, decisions around finances, decisions around diet, nutrition, exercise, health, decisions about relationships, decisions in this world actually do seem very complex, and it's not even surprising that you feel a little anxious about these decisions because they're so complex. It's kind of like if you use a sewing metaphor, let's say you and your mom, you had a ball of yarn, like yarn like you sew with, and your cat, which we just saw, its beautiful head got a hold of the ball of yarn and your sewing kit and played with it and batted it all over the house, and it was yarn everywhere, and then it was playing with it and stretching it, and you tried to put it back, and then the cat stole it again and did it, and then you put it back together, and cat stole it a third or fourth time. Every day the cat stole it, and eventually you have this tangled, knotted, somewhat a blob of yarn. It's not even a ball of yarn anymore, it's just a tangled blob. And this is what most people feel their minds are, like a tangled blob of yarn. It's very, very complex. And then there's all these decisions. What should I do with my life? I'm reading this book called A Course in Miracles, and it's telling me I need to learn how to pray. And that's why Jesus goes through all his teachings, and at the very back of the text, he has a section called Rules for Decision. If you can make it through all these undoing principles and ideas that he gives, then he gives a very simple, straightforward way to go forward in your day. He just says, here's 2 rules for decision. That's all you need today. You don't need any more, just 2. First of all, decide the kind of day that you want. A happy day, a joyful day, a free-flowing day, an easy day, a day that sounds like Eric's song, just relax, let go. You have something happy in your heart. You want some kind of a joyful, happy day. And Jesus said, very good, you've done number 1. Now you've only got one more left. And that is, if I make no decisions by myself, this is the day that will be given me. So if you can go through the day without making decisions based on Isabel and past learning, if you can have a wide open day, you don't even know what's going to happen, but you're going to give yourself permission to glide through the day and learn to be guided, be intuitive, to be spontaneous, to be prayerful, instead of just going through these rote routines based on past learning. Oh, I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do this. And that's where it gets difficult for most everyone when they think of all the things that they have to do, and they're not really happy about most of them. Well, these are all the have-tos, the shoulds, the ought-tos that I have to do as a human being, and then it's easy to get bogged down because sometimes the day doesn't work out that way. So Jesus says one important thing to say at the beginning of the Rules for Decision section, where he basically is saying, your one remaining problem. When Jesus Christ starts off a sentence with me, with your one remaining problem, you better believe I'm going to pay attention to whatever he's going to say, because that sounds really important. Your one remaining problem. I've made it through the text, now I've got one remaining problem, is that you decide first what you're going to do, and then ask. That's the one remaining problem. You decide first what you're going to do with your day, based on past learning, based on Isabel and the world and however the ego constructed it. You first decide what you're going to do, and then you ask. And Jesus said, well, that's your one problem. Flip it around. Turn it around. Say to the Holy Spirit, decide for me. All you have to do is focus on the happiness. Focus on the joy. Focus on the freedom. Focus on the free-flowing, relaxing day that you want. And then say, Holy Spirit, decide for God, for me. And then Jesus says, and it is done. It is done. Wow, that sounds very definitive. So the whole problem is that this whole time-space world is a projection of false needs. Because the Christ doesn't have any needs. The Christ is just a pure state of being. Imagine if somebody said, what are you going to do with your life? And you said, isness. Isness. Can you expand on that? Love. you know. But what are you going to do? Be. Let it be. You know, if you want to use the Beatles line. You know, you see how that is something that is so simple that it's beyond the realm of seeming practicality. And Jesus is saying, no, that's the most practical. You're so loved, you're so beloved, that if you never did anything else the rest of your life, you still would be the love that you are. And then I think it's also, to me, it's very humbling to think that all I have to do is stay in the prayer of my heart, to stay in the happiness, the joy, the freedom of what's in my heart, and everything else will be completely taken care of and given without any effort. That's the opposite of our conditioning, that's the opposite of our education, that's the opposite of all of our training. But to me, that's actually what this is all about. And we have had very, very joyful lives, but as Francis and I talk about a lot, we're very clueless. We didn't see any of it coming. Here comes the kitty cat. He said, "Where is that yarn?" I'm going to bat that yarn around a little bit more if I find it. But it's meant to be. We're meant to be joyful and playful, much like when children play. They can be so happy and joyful, but they really lose track of their surroundings. They lose track of everything in the joy of the moment. And I think of children coming together. It's not like the children call each other up on the phone, you know, 2 5-year-olds. What's on your plans for today? Well, I could meet you at 9:45. I could squeeze you in for 15 minutes. You know, the kids, they come together and they play and they lose track of time. They aren't trying to organize their day. They're just wanting to play because it's natural to play. It's very happy. And yet, it's part of a conditioning that somehow we have to grow up and we have to deal with the world, a very complex world based on learning the right things, getting the right education, specializing in the right things. And I discovered after 10 years of university full-time, undergraduate and graduate, that Jesus was just saying, will you just pray with me? Will you just stay with me? Will you just let me go before you? And let's have some fun. How do you get back to heaven without having some joy and happiness and fun with your earth life? And that's been the way it's gone, actually. You know, we actually do have a really happy life. We were talking when Pete was making the introductions, and we finally had shh. We're going to start. We're going to start. We're going to start. Oh yeah, there's people. Okay, and then but you get lost in the joy of the playing and the laughter. We were just laughing so hard we had to finally, okay, the light's coming on. We're ready to get serious here.
Yeah, actually, this I read your question Friday morning, hours before the retreat started, and after I read it, I then got put to a meeting. So this question, just after I read it, I completely went to the next thing. But the Spirit was so with this, basically the Spirit was in my mind saying time is a choice, because you were asking about choice. He said, you can choose to live with me, which is very practical, which means that stay in prayer with me, just ask me for everything. Or you can choose to live in the past or the future, which is the past, which means everything else. So basically the Spirit is saying, choose one decision, which is me. Don't choose anything else. Don't choose what to do. Don't choose who to meet. Don't choose anything of yourself, because that is all time. Or you choose me, and I have already made all the decisions for you, and you still will do anything you need to do. And that stayed with me so much that day. Just after this question, the Spirit choose to live with me. That's the only choice you can make. Where do you live? You live in time, in the time decisions, or you live with me, which is the present moment, which is the holy instant, which is within. And I like that because that also makes it very practical. What is our part? Are we really in the part to heal ourselves, to orchestrate our curriculum, to make sure we are doing the right job, meeting the right people, heal the right people, so that we can reach atonement? That's really not our part in any way. And our part is so simple. Choose the spirit. Choose the spirit. And I actually also just thought of this one example to make it even more relatable. I remember this one talk I had with my mom on the phone. And with her, I always dreaded calling her because our call always started with something and then go into this scenario where she would either think I live a miserable life, then I want to convince her that's not true, or she would be saying I abandoned her, that she lives a miserable life. So it always ends up there. So it's I always feel I hated that part of the call. I dreaded the call. And then this one time, it went exactly there. She started to cry, and because I abandoned her and I live a miserable life. And that day, I just thought, I am going to find something really present from the spirit. So I got nothing good to say anymore. So I just gave all my attention. It's like an antenna. Originally, it was focusing on her words and what I can say. Is this antenna completely tuned up? Okay, I'm scanning, and all the thoughts that come through, if it doesn't bring this quality of upliftment, I don't zoom in. I just scan, and nothing come from the spirit, right? Nothing come for the whole time, 10-20 minutes of emotion. But she just went a natural circle, and then she suddenly come out of it, and she was so happy, and she was telling me all the miracles, which I never reached that stage of the talk, because I always would stop her in the middle of it and trying to complain. And I watched it, and I was in amazement. But the most amazing thing for me was because I was completely horned into the spirit inside. I was so peaceful. It's almost like nothing can disturb my peace, no matter what she says. And then this is what I started to realize after that one phone call. I'm not here to change her. I'm not here to change her. I have a lesson to learn. How my every single moment is to give to the spirit so I can learn peace and I can learn to accept everything as they are. Then the miracle happened after that. It was amazing. She got a phone call right after she just became happy, and I was just feeling this peace and amazement of watching. She got a phone call, and it was like a telemarketer, almost because she put her on speaker and I can hear. It was like, "Hello, my name is Hu and Ho from this company. How are you doing today?" And I thought, okay, just hang up. And she's like, "I'm good. How are you?" She got into this conversation. And then it turned out to be this person is a representative of this public bus company who, through surveillance camera, noticed that my mom was on the bus yesterday, carried something heavy. Nobody helped her. So she called my mom to apologize and ask whether there's anything they can do at all to help her in any way. And I was like, who would do that? Public bus is not even an Uber or anything. And it was just all play out for me as this one lesson to say, your part is so tiny. You're not here to say the right thing. You're not here to heal anybody. And also I noticed during the whole time, the Spirit never gave me an instruction to be quiet. Because if He says, do nothing, just be quiet, then I would focus on that action. But my focus was so much not in action, was focused within to where are you, basically. And that is a huge lesson and teaching. And I thought, how simple to live a life like that. Not even action focused, not even having to worry about what is the guidance so that I can do the guidance. No, I'm living with you, that's my choice, and that is miraculous, because then you really watch miracles unfolding in front of you. So
that's a great example. It's like showing you that it's possible to live an intuitive life. It's possible to get so trusting in what's going on in your heart that you just start to relax into it and flow with it and let the day unfold and let your life unfold. Almost like a painting, like you're letting the paints come out onto the canvas moment by moment and just thoroughly enjoying the painting that's coming, not even knowing what it is or how it's going to look or what brushes you'll use. And it's going from a linear kind of analytic life where everything is boxed and conditioned and you should do this, you ought to do this, which is all based on make-believe needs and make-believe lacks, as if the present moment is not enough. We've been living trying to pretend that we can be happy in the world as a human being instead of just being intuitive and taking it moment by moment and saying, show the way, show me, let me pray on this. I mean, when I grew up even in a Christian family, and all of our prayers were like memorized. They were around food. Thank you for this food. Amen. That was one version of it, and it would be like, is that all there is to prayer? And yeah, eat your food and finish your plate. No dessert for you if you don't finish. I'm like, there was no sense of feelings. There was no sense of intuitiveness. There was no sense of, if I'd have said as a little boy, I'm guided to do this today, I would have got these stares in the family. You're guided? Oh wow. Who's guided now? Oh wow, little 5-year-old David's guided, It would have been met with sarcasm, and yet I still had to face that years later when I'm like in my late 20s or early 30s and I'm studying the Course, and instead of just giving a quick answer, to my mother, are you going to be at the party or not? Are you going to do it or not? I would have to do like Eric talked about on Friday night. I have to say, I'm just going to feel into that. My mom's like, feel into it. It's a simple decision. Yes or no. Are you going to be at the party or not? I'll pray on it, and it's not for several days, but I'll just see what I'm guided to do. Guided to do? What got into you? Who's guided? Well, I'm not going to sit there and say, I'm studying A Course in Miracles, and it's asking me to be more in touch with my feelings and more in touch with my intuition, and actually ask Jesus whether I should be at the party or not. I didn't actually go into that. That could have really... Then the whole family arrived. Now David's got Jesus telling him what to do, and you don't have to get into all that. You just have to be very honest and intuitively with what you're feeling, and allow yourself to become more intuitive with absolutely everything, where you start to realize that you don't have to have your whole life planned and mapped out. The original 4 that came together for the Course, they had no idea what they were getting into. They were all professionals, research psychologists, and Judy was into teaching, and Bill, and they all were into teaching in some way and education, but they were all quite intellectual, and then all of a sudden they're told, after they've got these black binders, before they're told what would happen next with the black binders, they're told, make the commitment first. This is 4 intellectual professionals that are being told by this inner voice to make the commitment first, then you'll be told what to do next. you see how different that is to us trying to figure out what we should do, or them trying to figure out what they should do. They didn't know what to do. And that was just the beginning, and now 3 of them have passed away, and Judy Scutch is about 89 years old, and she and the Foundation for Inner Peace, they're still praying. Day by day by day, they're praying to be shown what to do. If these intellectuals and psychologists and research psychologists can be shown to pray and listen and follow, we can do it too. We all can do it. We all are capable of following that guidance. And we don't really know the form of how it's going to play out, but we do know that we are going to become more and more peaceful and very, very happy and joyful at not knowing how our life should go. That relates to what I said about time yesterday, is that Jesus wants us to so tap into the present moment, into the miracle, that the future just proceeds from this present connection, not from the past. Not from the past and the maitre d' who's saying, oh, now you're stuck with the future of this because you did that, now you're going to be stuck with that in the future. We can't live that way anymore. We have to let the present moment take a forefront in our mind, which just means be intuitive and really feel the guidance of what we are called to do. So we have lived guided lives. I mean, Francis seemed to let go of a lot of things, but I think we both agree that more like they fell away. As we allowed ourselves to become intuitive and spontaneous, then lots of things fell away, and eventually it starts to feel like the whole world is falling away, that you're happy for no earthly reason. You don't even know why you're so happy, but you wake up happy and you go through the day happy, and you're definitely not trying to figure out or plan what the day will hold.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, when I first met David, because I was very intellectual, and I studied the course for about 4 years before I came to the first retreat. And I can just like analyze everything and then zoom down all the questions. Then the one question, I seize the moment to ask David one question, which is, I think I see every single problem comes down to this belief I'm a body, which is connected with time. Mm-hmm. And said, how do I unplug this one belief for real, experientially? And David's answer was, if I really want to know that, I would spend the rest of my life finding out. That's your answer. And to me, I was like, rest of my life finding out, that's a very long commitment. That's not the answer I was looking for, I want a one sentence formula that I can do. But I thought of that today because I feel like when I truly give my life over, it actually feels more a momentary practice instead of a lifelong practice. Because Jesus actually said in the Course, you may think it takes a long time from readiness to mastery, but he said time is under my control. So it feels like once we really talk about commitment and give our life to the Spirit or to the present moment or to the prayer, it's all the same, mm-hmm. Then it really just becomes this moment. That's all you can choose. You can choose partially. You can choose to partly live in the doing and partly live in prayer. So it's all come down to extreme practicality, And in that, it is the end of time in the moment, and then you really forget about how long it's going to take because you already live in it, in the moment. Mm-hmm. So it does also tie into our other question around commitment. Commitment,
yeah. I think we can move into this question of commitment because what I was sharing yesterday, the script is written, and if you really even had a hint or an inkling of the script is written, like everything is destined and you only have choice of your state of mind, then of course deciding to have a happy day would take on supreme importance. If you really understood you couldn't change anything of form, you could just choose to be happy, and you fully had the power of mind and the power of prayer to choose to be happy, that would take all the complexity out of it. It would be like you would show up, wow, another day of happiness, moment by moment, for me to enjoy, and I don't have to figure it out, analyze it, or try to make it happen. Because the doer is a construct. Whether we talk about it as a person or a human being, personality, this doer, it's heavy. Because there's always this feeling like I haven't done enough or I need to do more. That's where a lot of anxiety comes in. And depression. I haven't done enough. I'm not good enough. I don't measure up. There's a lot of darkness that comes from that. And in the East they call it neti. Jesus is basically saying that the doing of the body and the undoing that will occur have to be under Christ's control. It has to come through prayer. It is going to be extremely frustrating and challenging if you believe that as a person you have to figure salvation out. You have to figure it all out as a person. So for me, there was like an experience of surrender, like, okay, I know I need help, and I trust you, and I'm going to just really practice being more prayerful and more tuned in, and really watch my feelings and use that as my barometer. Because Jesus tells us, you think 1,000 choices confront you every day, and yet there is but one. This is good news, that we have but one choice to make. And then a lot of times we'll say, wow, that sounds really good, but okay, practically speaking, what does that mean? I have but one choice. He says, how do you feel? Start there. How do you feel? Use your feelings as a barometer. Are you happy? That's almost like a question that in relationships you're not allowed to ask. What have you done lately? Did you pay the bills? Did you take out the garbage? Did you do these hundreds of thousands of things? And then somebody says, are you happy? That's like at a different order. That's at a different level. And the answer is at a different level from the human linear perspective. But it starts with, how do I feel? And what is it for? Like, that's what happened to me when I was in grad school, and I'd been in university for 10 years, and there was this big woods of forest that was next to this huge university. And so I would just leave the university and I would go walking through the trees, past the trees, along these hills and valleys in this forest, pondering if I was happy, and I was not. And then asking, what's it going to take for me to be happy? And I started to get answers when I was just walking in the woods and saying, what is it, what do I have to follow to be happy? And it was that I had to let go of everything that I believed. And I said, wow, okay, where do I start? How do you feel? And ask yourself, with every seeming decision you make in form, what is it for? Does this bring me joy? Really, there's people that tell us you can't ask that question, does it bring me joy? Because they say, no, there's a lot of things you're going to have to do in this world that are not joyful. And Jesus doesn't agree. He actually feels that joy can be the torch. Joy can lead the way. If you follow your heart, follow your joy, everything works out. Joseph Campbell, the famous writer, researcher, he came up with, after studying all these cultures all over the world, his final nugget of wisdom was, follow your bliss. That's what you get out of studying all the cultures of the world, is follow your bliss. To me, that was wisdom. that was a very wise thing that came to him. And I think Jesus is basically just teaching us the same thing. Follow your bliss, follow your joy. Everything works out. And everything is given you, but you don't have to try to solve it in earthly kind of ways. You know, when you have things that regarding finances and relationships and the body, it has to be the prayer of following your heart that will solve all the pieces of the puzzle together in one shot. It's not going to be found in piecemeal, because it's almost like trying to stop a leak in a dam by putting stones and rocks and mud, and as soon as you clog up one thing, the water squirts out in another place, and another, and you're just running busily trying to put rocks and mud to stop the water, and it seems challenging and hopeless and frustrating. And Jesus is saying that's what happens when you're trying to handle the problems on your own. You will feel frustration. But when you give it over to me and say, show me, guide me, lead the way, Holy Spirit, decide for God for me, then you fall into this beautiful, graceful sense of guidance, and you become so intuitive, and then all of a sudden nothing seems difficult. Everything seems like it's just raining down, like, whoa, thank you, every day, thank you, because the guidance is everything. And most of us were not trained to have problem solving that involved guidance. We were trained at learning education and formulas to solve problems. And so we personally thought we had to solve all these problems on all these different levels, and it got overwhelming at some point. So we're just telling you, it's from our experience, if you want to be happy, it does involve a surrender. It can involve this kind of anxiety of like, I personally have to figure it out. I personally have to solve the riddle, like it's a Rubik's Cube, and somehow you have to keep trying to change the variables to find the right thing. It's actually much simpler than that.
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, thank you. Let's maybe talk about commitment a little bit more, because that seems to be the thing. I think it was Vivian who asked a little bit of that right off the bat for us here.
I can read it first. Vivian, hi Vivian. Yeah, Vivian's question is, I think I have let my ego run amok with a paragraph in the Course from the text, chapter 7, section 7. Nor is it possible to love it totally at times. You cannot be totally committed sometimes. Then it goes on to talk about the use of denial. I think I have always thought that Jesus meant what we cannot be committed all the time. But now I think Jesus is saying something quite different. Would you please comment on this? Many thanks.
That's a good question, because what you thought you interpreted that to mean is that we are not capable of being committed all the time. That is actually the ego's interpretation of the passage. And what Jesus is saying is the atonement, or the correction for the whole belief in separation, requires a total commitment. So he is actually saying, when he says you cannot be totally committed sometimes, he means it literally. You cannot be totally committed sometimes. There is no such thing ultimately as partial commitment. You know, sometimes we think, all right, God, I'll give you 60% today. and Jesus is laughing, going, that God it doesn't help you or anyone a 60%. We're used to thinking in terms of partial partiality in partial terms. But I think what I discovered was this was the way that Jesus was bringing me to the present moment, because I realized that as long as I kept spreading it out onto David on the timeline, it was just a hodgepodge of things, and it was always a mixed bag. Oh, some days I seem more committed than others, some days I seem to be compromising, some days, it's just a mixture of things, and it can get very depressing when you see your life as just a sequence of compromises every day. But when I started to realize that I could have commitment to peace of mind, that I could commit myself to happiness, to a sense of integrity, to a sense of honesty, to allowing the Spirit to help clear my mind up, to wash away the debris of the compromise, and that I could be guided moment by moment and live in a total commitment. That's when I would feel the peace stabilizing in my heart. And Jesus does say, only a constant purpose can stabilize events. Only a constant purpose can stabilize events. Why is that important? It's because if I want a stable perception of the world, a peaceful perception of the world, I have to give and share the Holy Spirit's purpose with everyone and everything without exception, in order to stabilize my perception, in order to leave this herky-jerky, up and down, mixed bag of emotions that we call a human being. If I want to leave that tangled ball of yarn that I talked about earlier behind, I have to have a constant purpose. And what I discovered was that takes mind training. That's why when Jesus would say, this is a course in mind training, I would say, oh, that must be what you're talking about there, because if I have different goals for different situations, if I have different goals with different people, and if I try to completely compartmentalize my life, how am I going to find unified perception? How am I going to see the world differently? Look upon the world with the Spirit if my goals are so divergent? If I have conflicting ideas in my mind that are constantly competing and conflicting with each other, how will I find peace? And Jesus said that's exactly it. You won't know peace until you have one goal that you apply to everything. And I remember one time I said to Jesus, is there a passage in the Course that talks about this? He said, yes. I opened the book up. The peace of God is my one goal, the aim of all my living here, the end I seek, my purpose and my function and my life while I abide where I am not at home. That's just one sentence, but he's one goal, aim, purpose, function, life. He just says it with all these different words that say the same thing. Like, you make your mind single-pointed in its devotion to peace of mind. And I think that suddenly clarified, when I read the Bible for many years, I wondered what Jesus was talking about when he said, let thine eye be single. And I think he was saying, I need your attention and your purpose in your mind to be single. If you want to know God, God is single. God is one, not many. God is one Spirit, and if you want to go in that direction, you need to apply that purpose, forgiveness, to everything that you perceive without exception. So I'm glad you asked that, because I do feel like my life has been a life of devotion and commitment, and even for myself and for those that I seem to be with, that seems to be the underlying characteristic of everyone. We all have the same goal. We all come together with the same goal. And then our devotion spills out into happiness and joy, and we laugh a lot, and we share a lot of joy and laughter, and then people feel it, and it's like that when Harry met Sally. I want what she's having. People want. It's infectious. The joy, the happiness is like, oh yeah, I'd like to have that too. I'd like to have that experience in my life, a happy life, a joyful life. But it does take mind training. We always talk about it. It's not something where just somebody comes along and takes the magic wand and just taps you on the head and you're happy from the magic wand. It actually takes devotion and commitment. But not so much to earthly goals. When we're not so big into the future or numbers or the earth changing in some way. Francis made a little a skit with a group of people here about the pandemic, and it was saying, her skit was basically saying, this pandemic's been going on for 16 billion years. It's the pandemic of linear time and space. And it put the whole pandemic in a whole new context. It took it way out from what seems to be the pandemic to separation from God is the pandemic. And there is a solution, and it's called mind training. And we get really excited about mind training, we're just really excited. And others kind of sometimes say, what are you talking about? But for us, it is important. And quite funny, actually. So thank you, Vivian. That's good. You're right. We cannot be totally committed sometimes. That is the truth. Well, there are so many questions we have here. A lot of them, as usual, are very, very specific. But what do you feel? Do you feel to address any of those, or shall we go live and open it up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe we'll go live. Go
live. So Pete, we will just ask everybody if you want to ask your question directly or share something very directly. We've kind of given a bit of a context today, but we will do our best to help bring it in and bring it in a practical way, and from the bottom up. We will address the questions in the context of time and belief and decision and commitment that we've just talked about, because that's going to be where the answer lies.
Okay. Well, first we could go to Joe and George. You guys want to unmute there?
Good morning. Hello. I have a question about my past. Just recently this year, I reached for the course because I experienced PTSD as a firefighter with 25 years experience. I had a challenging childhood also. As I'm hearing the talk today, I'm kind of thinking I really took the bait. I didn't know that I was in a dream. I didn't know this was an illusion. I wish I did at the time. The course has helped me immensely, and everything that I'm getting from the community here. I'm sure my specifics might be a little different, but we all have these struggles, and some more than others, as far as how much trauma we see or how much illusion that we actually take the bait on. I guess my question for myself and anybody else in similar instances, how do we move forward, let's say in a more of a critical time when you've really bought the illusion and you feel overwhelmed by it?
Thank you. Yeah, I think when I was reading the Course, I kept seeing that at times Jesus would talk about form and specifics, and at other times he would talk about content. And at one point he said, your mind is too bound to form and you don't understand content at all. And that's traumatic. If content is love, And love, as the Beatles said, love is all you need. And Jesus is basically saying the same thing, like love is the answer. And all the specific forms of dysfunction, specific forms of fear, specific forms of trauma are all made singularly with one purpose by the ego, to deny the love and to prevent the awareness of that love. Then for me, that's where I start to really open up to the idea of prayer and guidance and thinking, I can't really look back on my history or my life and figure it out, but I can say right now, what is it that I need to be shown? What is it that I'm still actively using to block my awareness of content? That I need to loosen up from judging the form, because that's how the diagnosis of the world, the psychologist, the psychiatrist, the medical profession will always try to break things down in terms of form. Like what forms caused the traumas back in the past. And Jesus is saying, well, actually it's your egoic interpretation that you're using in this moment. You know, it's like you are still letting the ego draw from the pool of the past, and your maitre d' is just saying, now you're going to be stuck and condemned to those traumas in the future. And it wants to paint a very dark picture. This is what happened in the past. Your maitre d' is now introducing it into the future, and you're going to be condemned to a future like that. And that's very intense. That can even make it worse when you think that you're condemned to a future of the same kind of syndrome or same kind of intensity. So for me it's most practical to come with wholly empty arms and say, I need help and I need to be shown, and also know that everything that seems to happen during the day, the conversations, the people you meet, the things that you come across on the internet, that everything will be designed by the Spirit to reach you, to ease that interpretation, which is generating the trauma. But you see, we have to let go of the idea that past events caused it, like a firefighter running into burning buildings. You know, most people of the world would say, yeah, that's got to be very shocking as a profession. Almost like being a police officer or being in the military over in Iraq or Vietnam or something. What the world would say, high stress situations that cause your mind to go into all kinds of intense emotions. So that's what I think the value of this retreat. It's starting to say, no, my mind is actually very powerful, and I do have the power of interpretation. The events never caused anything. It's my interpretation, my egoic interpretation of these events caused the stress, caused the trauma. And now I'm being educated with the Course about what are those beliefs that are still held in place that are determining this faulty interpretation right now, that are literally keeping me from the holy instant, from all the love. And I find that that's what I had to do too, because as long as I kept rehashing the events in my life, and which ones were fortunate and lucky and which ones were unfortunate and disastrous, then I was still using faulty thinking to try to block the love, block the light in my mind. And I had to start to see I'm completely mistaken about the past. And that was really the question you raised. You said, how much of the past can I still retain to continue to function in the world? And I said, really, I found I couldn't retain any of it. I needed to show up with a sense of show me, almost like a young child saying to the parent, what does that mean? You know, I need to be shown. But that's what I did. I cultivated that attitude of show me, every day. Show me, show me, show me. Show me what you're trying to teach me. Show me that I can trust you to have things work out. Not based on my past learning, but based on my present trust. Let present trust direct the way. So I thank you for bringing that up, because that's a good example of from the bottom up. We still have to deal with what seems to be the issue, but we have to now reorient it. We have to allow the Spirit to reorient our mind into a new framework in order to really come in touch with that content. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Next we can go to Barton. You can unmute there.
Hi.
Hi, Barton.
Thank you, first of all, for sharing everything that this community gives, because it's been super helpful to me, and I know for other people too. I wanted to kind of play a game, because you were talking about having fun, and I've noticed that you tend to talk a lot about both the line, the script is written, and I've also heard you speak, David, about how you find it surprising that people are so, they become so attached to what that means. I haven't felt that way. And I wanted to kind of dive into that with you, because I think in the context of time, we're told that this is all a delusion, this physical experience is a delusion, and we're told that Jesus is in charge of time and space, and we're told that miracles collapse time. And we're also told that we're supposed to use the divine logic of our minds. So it doesn't make logical sense to me that the script is written, which is only used one time in the course, means that it's set in stone and fixed, which is one interpretation. It feels to me, and I think this is kind of where I wanted to go. I wanted to kind of go into our hearts with what this means, not just the intellect, but it feels to me like what it means is like there's a script, and either you're on script or you're not on script. And the real script is to listen to the guidance, and as you talk about, be guided. Let the script unfold to you. Otherwise, you're stuck on the ego script, which is not a good script. And that decision, which mind are you in, is definitely going to play which script is going to play out. So I wanted to kind of throw that over to you and play with the interplay between the script and time and space.
Yeah, it's good that you're bringing it up, because it's actually not just mentioned one place. It's like I said yesterday, the script is written as just another form of lesson number 7, I see only the past. There's actually a part 2 back near the rules for decision where Jesus says, there is no escape from what must occur. He says it in many different ways, but basically what he's saying is, as long as your mind is focused on the form of the future or the past. In fact, I think I shared at the Into the Kingdom retreat over there in Europe that the script is written is just a metaphor for the world is the past. And that's really what I was talking about yesterday, that this whole world is over and gone. You're reviewing mentally what has already gone by. And that is a problem for the mind. It's a conundrum, because it's like working a Rubik's Cube that will never, it's like constantly shifting the Rubik's Cube, hoping to have a solution in form, and there isn't a solution in terms of form. But I think you're exactly on the right track, where the focus is on seeing the world exactly as it is, which is false, which is over, which is past, and experience. I hear you saying, I want to go from the heart, I want to really experience this, and that does come from following guidance. I think at the beginning, I was reading the Course and just trusting and praying and trusting, and then there was all these kind of surreal experiences that I started to have, and then some revelatory experiences where the world disappeared completely 3 different times. It was the disappearance of the universe, which was wow, taking me away from whatever I thought my life was into this bursting, open, happy experience, which was so full of love. And then I started, after this kept happening and happening, I started to think, this world is like a fairy tale. It didn't have the same quality. It didn't seem real. It felt very fairy tale-ish. And then it started to turn more and more into a happy fairy tale when I just started to merge into that feeling, thinking, oh yeah, this is, oh thank you. This is wonderful, this is wonderful. And it's also, we did get questions too about if there's 2 parts to the mind, a right mind and a wrong mind, or as you were saying, kind of a off the script or feeling in the script, those kind of things. And the question was, is there a 3rd part of the mind that's deciding? And Jesus clarifies that in the Rules for Decision. He says, no, the ego is a decision, and the Holy Spirit is a decision, and it's the mind. All decisions are of the mind. Human beings, in human experience, it seems like humans make decisions, but they're part of a projection of decision. It's almost like the wrong mind projected onto the body, as if humans can make wrong decisions and right decisions. So I do feel it's very deep, because we're really starting to ask with everything, what is it for? It took me quite a while to start to ask that question. I'm walking through the woods, what is it for? I've been in university for 10 years full time. Jesus is like, yeah, what's that for? What are you trying to get out of that 10 years of university? What is that for? That started to free my mind up away from things. And I would never say to use anything from the Course in kind of a concrete way, because if the mind takes that as a concrete thing, the script is written, it's like, oh well, okay, it's all set. It's a game over. Might as well just sit on my couch. People kind of interpret it, but that's not been my experience at all. It's a live. It's a sense of being in the moment, and the miracle in this moment is to me everything, and it just can be helpful if you start to look at the world and you somehow think things should be different than they are. That can be a helpful idea, because that's the key of adding to the script and trying to improve the world. That's insidious. When it's a perceptual problem, you're looking through a cracked lens. The problem is in the lens. It's not what's on the other side of the lens. It's in the perception. And to me, that's the other thing that I like, is that it really brings me to that point of, I had to really start to admit that I had a perceptual problem. Jesus would remind me of that over and over, like you're seeing through a darkened glass, like they say in Corinthians in the Bible. It's the cracked lens, it's the distorted perception that's the problem. And I'm glad you're bringing this up, because this is like a key point. We even have a friend of mine from India who wrote in the last question that we received today before we went on, and that kind of goes right at the heart of this too, because this is another thing. Thank you, Bart. I just want to segue into Aman's question. You want to read it?
Yeah, sure.
This is a good way to apply what we just talked about.
Aman from India. For years, whenever I see someone else being attacked in some way, for example, being raped, Or whenever in an election in some state in India, if a corrupt political party wins election, I start feeling anxious, frustrated, scared, and start worrying for the poor people of that state. Because in India, a large population lives under extreme poverty, and a corrupt regime guarantees far more intense suffering for those millions of poor people, women, children. I don't know how to correctly perceive such situations to be completely free from it. Please guide.
Hi, Aman. Happy to see you again. Well, that's what is so radical about the mind training of A Course in Miracles, because you've described something that many people can relate to about the difficulties and the challenges, the seeming unfairness, the seeming extreme conditions that seem to be part of the world. And of course in India, with so many billions of people, you have billions of people, 100 and some different languages, huge diversity, you're perceiving this basically on a daily basis, and you're putting it down into a very succinct question. And then what comes to mind for me is lessons 79 and 80 from the workbook of A Course in Miracles. Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved, is lesson 79. And then lesson 80 is, let me recognize my problems have been solved. And that one is saying that there are no problems. That's very deep. That sounds like the self-realization that you were asking about, wanting and desiring in your heart. But let's go back to 79, because those two lessons come as 79 and 80 in the workbook. Let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. And then 80, let me recognize my problems have been solved. What Jesus is telling us is, even if your problems have already been solved, and He's assuring us they have been, that would be the self-realization that you're talking about, which India is quite famous for, actually. But Jesus is saying, even if all your problems have been solved, it wouldn't help you if you misdefined the problem. And because if you have the answer, but you haven't defined the problem correctly, then that answer won't be applicable. Because you have to define the problem correctly before the solution can be accepted. And He's telling us the problem is not in the world. The problem is in the mind that perceives the world. So He says God placed the answer right next to the problem and it was solved. And the ego projected out a world of many, many, many problems on many different levels. Poverty, government, environmental problems. Somebody told me this past week there was some kind of an asteroid that came really close, flying through space. It just barely missed Earth in the last couple of weeks. We didn't even... Our community, everyone's going, what? They don't read the news. But there's a big asteroid, maybe the size of a football field or something, just happened to be whizzing by, like somebody throwing a pebble at somebody. It missed us. But see, that's at a different level than politics, or than having a sore throat, or than poor people not having enough food. There are many, many different levels in this world, and Jesus assures us that the problem is a perceptual problem, that you're looking through a lens, you're looking through a cracked lens. If you had glasses, for example, and your glasses were shattered, and you were going, I feel anxious. I'm feeling really anxious today because I'm very I'm very confused about this world and what to do and everything. And Jesus would say, well, here, let me give you a new set of glasses to see the world, and this is the forgiven glasses, and these glasses put a smile on your face because you feel that love in your heart. But it's a corrected perception. So this, in some sense, relates to all the things we've talked about today, even Isabel's question about decision-making. This all relates to having to have mind training to see the world in a new way. Because even for Jesus to go through a seeming series of events where his body is pinned up on a cross, and it seems to be bleeding, and then they put a crown of thorns on his head, and what does he have to say to that whole thing? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Seems kind of casual and nonchalant for such an extreme situation. I mean, like a Monty Python thing, ouch, that hurts. Monty Python could come up with a different interpretation, but Jesus has got this, forgive them for they know not what they do. There has to be a different state of mind, self-realized mind, a self-realized mind that has realized that it was only the guilt from judgment and fragmentation that was causing pain. And once the guilt was given up, and once the distorted perception was given up, he could say, arise, take up your bed and walk. He could say, by your faith you are healed. He could call Lazarus, seems to be a dead body, a friend who's got a dead body, a stinky body, stinky grave clothes on. He's been stinking in a grave for like 3 days. Arise, come forth. Whoa, what is that state of mind that raises the dead, that heals the sick, that has transcendence over everything in the world and seems to no longer be bound by the projections of the world? That's that self-realized state of mind. But what he's telling us in Lesson 79 is, even if I gave you the answer already, which I have, it won't help you in a practical way as long as you've misdefined the problem, because you're still looking to the world for the problems and for the solutions. And that's why, when you see poor people or you see crimes going on and things like that, whether it's on television or you witness it in person, and then you start to think, at least if we could elect honest politicians that had a heart of love, that at least those politicians would get food to the poor people. You see, you're still saying, I already know what the problem is, and I have an idea of what the solution would be. Good, honest, heartfelt politicians. And so you've already constructed the problem and the solution, and then when you see the election goes and you go, these are not good politicians, they don't care about the people, they don't care about starving people, then you start to feel anxiety because you've defined the problem, you've defined the solution, and then there's something happening in form that is not fit with Aman's solution for the poverty of India. And yet, deep down in your heart, self-realization is the answer. But what we're learning is you have to give up your beliefs about what the problem is in order to accept that self-realization. It's there, it's a bright light in the mind, but these learned beliefs, including time, including bodies, including poverty, including victims and victimizers, all those learned beliefs are like a dense cloud cover that are covering over the light of self-realization. And this does relate to really all the questions that we've talked about today, but your question just is just very succinct and a perfect example for us to use about how have I defined the problem. It could relate to relationships too, because I know you and I have talked about business, you and your father's business, and starting your own business. We've talked about relationships, and we've talked about this in many different ways over the years. I even came and you were my guide. You took me to Rishikesh and you guided me around India. And so we've had plenty of time to talk about this, but I see it's coming back to this same thing of like, maybe I haven't defined the problem correctly, because even in the business questions or the relationship questions or this question about these conditions that you're perceiving, it still comes back to how willing am I to say I've been wrong about the way that the ego set the problem up. I've been wrong about the way that it's been set up. And if I can be shown there's another way to see it in my mind, then I have a good chance of accepting that. I've got a good shot.
That's even in the rules for decisions. Like Jesus says, set up the day with the intention to be happy. And then if you go so far that got lost and have all these ego emotions, then that's the time to say, I hope I'm wrong. What have I got to lose?
That's one of the restorative steps.
Yeah, restorative. What have I got to lose? To ask.
Yeah.
That's very, very simple.
He even gives us that in Rules for Decision. I hope I've been wrong about how I'm seeing this. And so what have I got to lose? You know, once you've worked yourself into a tizzy, into an upset, into an anger, he's like saying, here's practical restorative things. But he also says it's much easier to have a happy day if you stick with the first two. You don't even need 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you stay with 1 and 2, decide the kind of day you want and say to yourself, if I make no decisions by myself, this is the day that will be given me. He says it's much easier to have a happy day that way than to try to get back after you've gone off on an ego tangent. If you've got off the beam, we all know that too. We all can nod, yeah. Once you get into rage, you know, how do you get out of it? Yeah, you need a lot of restorative steps when that rage, when that anger, when that depression hits. It's going to be very, very strong. Well, I think we've lost contact with Aman, but I was hoping Courtney,
yes.
She's our resident stand-up comedian. I was hoping we could get Courtney on here. That's a perfect follow-up to the line we've been taking today. So, hi, Courtney.
Hi. Yeah, my question, and I think my prayer of the heart has kind of changed since I've been with you guys, and this is my first retreat, and I'm so happy to be here. But I've just felt like that owl that we saw in that first clip, right? I've had these moments of like really clear connection with spirit and with concepts of the Course with, you know, I am the dreamer of this dream, and every person I see is an opportunity to forgive myself. But then I just get right back into I'm back in the wind tunnel, and I'm confused. I don't understand. The ego chimes in. It's like, what do you mean you created a dream? Like, it doesn't understand, right? And then I think that's where the practical questions come in of what am I meant to do with my life, right? I have this dream before I started the Course of being a comedian, and that has a lot of ego behind it, right? About being in front of a crowd and getting that praise. And I'm at this point where all I want is the joy of forgiveness and healing, and I'm willing to give my life over. And if that means giving up this dream, I'm willing to do it, but I just feel like that bird, and I'm confused, and I don't understand what to do, because whenever I try to forgive or ask spirit, the ego is just so vicious, and I feel like I'm in that wind tunnel, and I don't understand what I'm meant to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Courtney, because I think that your direction, even as a comedian, and enjoying the humor, enjoying the laughter of those around you, is definitely a strong seed that is of the Spirit. And of course, the ego will take anything that is even a seed of the Spirit, and it, even like a musician who loves to sing, and then ego says, all right, let's turn it into a career. And then the singer all of a sudden gets into pressure, concerns about recording, distribution, and finances and contracts, and the ego is quick to jump all over it. Even though there's a joy of singing, you have a joy of laughter. And actually, there's a great line in the Course where Jesus says, into eternity where all is one, crept a tiny mad idea at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. And here you are saying, I want to laugh, and I want to have laughing people around me, and I want to do it for my life. So it was interesting, your question is the first kind of question like we've had on an online retreat probably ever. I don't think we've ever had a question like that centering around the laughter. And yet, even recently for us, we've been down in the community, and I've been emphasizing humor and laughter, so much so that we have our celebration coming up at the end, and they've put on a skit, a comedy skit, and another one that's and there's different things that are being formed around this feeling of laughter. And Bill Thetford, wasn't that the book by Carol Howe? Never Forget to Laugh is the name of the book about one of the first two Course students on the planet, Bill Thetford, that our friend Carol Howe wrote. But when we talk about the laughter and humor, we're talking about the gentle laughter and humor of the Spirit, which comes from the mind training. So, whereas I've always been appreciative of comedy, of humor my whole life, it's starting to really take over our life now. Our community life is now becoming more centered on the lightness and the humor of feeling the trust in the Spirit, of feeling this new way of looking at the world, which is not a storm. You know, certainly the one with the owl was so relaxed that I noticed he was even flying upside down. He didn't even care that he was upside down until he opened his eyes, and then he perceived a storm. So I do think that you can focus on a life of trust, and yet that's part of your inclination. Everyone has certain skill sets, everyone has certain things that they are drawn to, certain types of, it could be humor, it can be music, it can be the use of skills in artistic ways, that the Spirit wants to kind of unify all the skills toward the light and let them all be used by that. But this is kind of exciting for us. We were even saying, oh, a comedian, wouldn't that be great to have Courtney visit us? And because we always we're kind of like the Monty Python of A Course in Miracles. If you had a camera and you watched us in our community, it's pretty funny. It gets pretty funny and wacky at times, but we're enjoying it.
Yeah.
We're enjoying it.
And also really like that your question pointing to the thing about function as well, because we all have a function, a divine function, and it's actually not informed, because when we normally talk about function, it's like my body take on a role in the world. What is that? Like, it's very defined. A comedian is a role. But for example, I was talking with my friend JP about David at some point, and I said, David is such a great speaker. And JP said, but David is not a speaker. I said, what do you mean? He said, David is a friend, a guide, a father. It's like describing all the characteristics of a spirit. And then I thought, that's true. How can we define our function as what we do? You know, it's very, very small, but this is exactly what the Spirit wants us to use the body for, to bear witness of the qualities and the light of the Spirit. So you go out and you live your life with so much prayer in your heart, and then you become the comedy, you know, you become the laughter, and the Spirit wants you to bear the laughter of Him, which is so happy and so light-hearted, and people will just laugh when they are in your presence. And that is the divine function, and that is actually effortless when and the skills the body accumulates will just come out naturally, be used as a channel to channel this light and this light-heartedness and this playfulness. So it just feels really, and I feel like that's what we truly get satisfied in life, is to play our part that the Spirit gives to us, to abide in Him in mind, and let the body to be used for Him. And if we do that, actually we don't get tired. We have endless energy, and we don't really have victim thoughts that I'm unhappy because this person is just all filled up from within. And the projection doesn't come. But then, you know, when we actually tip into the victimhood and the projection, you can bear that we're not fulfilling the divine function that we're here to do. So we're deeply dissatisfied and feel lack inside. That's where the projection comes, even onto the body, you know.
Yeah.
So,
I feel that's your comedy, your humor. I feel like the Spirit will use that is part of your calling. That is part of your destiny. Svava was just telling me, I think yesterday, she was saying when she was a little girl, she liked to write, she liked to sing, and she liked all types of music, art. She liked art, and now all those things are coming through. Lots of writing, art, music pouring through, lyrics, learning to play the guitar. You know, it's coming 4 decades later, after this childhood experience of just very naturally, as a 5-year-old, you know, these things were all there, all present. And now, 4 decades later, they're there too. But it's part of a calling. It's not like, it's also part of divine providence that when you really learn to be tuned in and aligned and intuitive and in the flow, everything is like a dance. Everything's taken care of. So then in the dance there's not a separate thing called a career. It's just like, I talk to some people and they'll say, oh funny, money just showed up here, or came, well I didn't see that coming. It comes in not in a structured way like a career and a paycheck sometimes. The deeper you go, it's just, the dance is you're in it and you see it and you're filled up with it. And all of your skills and abilities get used beautifully in that calling, in that dance. But it's just that the mindset that we've been programmed with about earning a living and those kind of things has to give way to miracles. And then the miracles become so natural that it ceases to be a question, how will I live? Your joy, your happiness, your humor is the life. And then the rest is just the window dressing. It's out there. So thank you for bringing that up. That's beautiful. That's the first time we've had that angle. So we're very grateful. You see somebody on the list that jumps out?
Well, I think Janine is Janica. Is that the first time?
Janine Janica. Yes, you were bringing up. I remember you were the one that was praying through the night in the hot flashes, and all the amazing things that you were actually practically applying the prayers to something that was disturbing you.
Yeah. Hi. So I'm Janine, and I have a perceptual problem. I'm following guidance, and often I'm met with miracles which feel wonderful. But and this is the perception, that sometimes I'm not met with miracles, and so I feel the absence of miracles. And so then I begin to question, well, was that even guidance? So I see that ego has come in and introduced time. And part of me is trying to follow my Eastern teachings, which say, just be humble, surrender the results, forget about the expectations, be a good practitioner, which is also ego. So I'm having a heck of a time with this, this navigating and expecting in time and miracles. I don't know, what do I do?
Well, what's coming to me is I remember when I first started to do this path, I had miracles here and there and here and there, and then it was sporadic, and I would be like you, woo, wow. Yeah, I'm really happy when I'm in the miracle and I could feel it and everything, and then the other part was like, okay, back to the drawing board here. Maybe I need to watch my prayer, watch my thoughts, watch my emotions. But it's a convincing. If you think of it as the Spirit, the Holy Spirit has the purpose to convince the mind, convince you. It's all on the Spirit. You can take it off of Janine. That's what I would do. I would take it off of David, and I would say, your show. It's a little wild here, but it's your show, and it's on you. It's all on you. I'm willing, but it's on you. You've got to convince me. And so, when I first came across the Course, that was 1986. These are the kind of discussions I was having. Instead of like that Jerry Maguire, show me the money. I was like looking at Jesus and the Holy Spirit. Show me the miracles. You're going to have to show me the miracles. You're going to have to convince me of this, because I can't personally figure this out, but I'm willing to be shown. But you're going to have to show me. So it throws it back on the Spirit, and the Spirit loves that when you throw it. Just really throw it, like throw a ball. You say, here, take that. And the Spirit's like, yeah, thank you. That's the way it works. You need to realize you're in the follower position, and this miracle worker the Spirit is arranging time and space, will say, for my greatest happiness, to convince me that it's true. So I'm glad you're bringing this up, because that's the most important thing for me, was starting to loosen from the doer of thinking that I personally was responsible for clicking into this miracle mode, which is a lot of weight to carry, to try to put it on our own shoulders, so to speak, when actually the Spirit wants us to have faith and to like bring it on, to do the matrix thing. Just use that finger and say, come on, bring it on, and it's your show, so you show me.
Yeah, it's like the Spirit wants to use the situation in our lives to show us what it is, and we're not here to show ourselves. So even I was thinking this morning, you shared this parable of someone have a toothache.
Yeah, Robert Varley,
and he had a toothache. And normally when you have a toothache, you go to the dentist, and he just prayed. And the Spirit basically told him to call his father. And he called his father, and the toothache went away completely. So it's like even that, the Spirit is using it to show you what body is, really, through that kind of experience. What your function is, what a calling someone is really for, but is ultimately is teaching the mind what it is and what the body is. So if we just jump in with every single scenario thinking, I already know what the function of it, the purpose of it, and then the problem, the solution, we really do not give the Spirit a chance to actually convince us what everything is for and about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved your example too on Friday night, because you were confronted with like the hot flashes and not being able to sleep, being woken up many times, and then you just determined through the power to use it just as a reminder to get up and pray, which to me is exactly the best use of time. It's always to pray. As soon as you experience a hot flash, the ego will be jumping right in there with past learning, with menopause and all kinds of things that mean nothing. It's a fictitious lie. It's a fabrication of false cause and effect, and it's going to jump right in there with all these appropriate things to deal with it. And then the story of Robert Varley, being told to pray when he had a toothache, having a beautiful call with his father and then going to visit his father, the whole tooth situation disappeared. But that flips the whole medical model on its tail, because the medical model said if you have a sore tooth or a toothache, the problem is in your mouth. Just like I was telling Aman, no, the problem is not in the politicians, it's not in the poverty, it's not in the lack of food, it's not in the craziness that goes on with perception of victimizers. We are in great need of prayer, and your example Friday night was a perfect example of prayer is the answer. It was the perfect example of how you activate the power of your mind through prayer, and you take it off of the body and the analysis of symptoms and the analysis of sleep to what the answer is. And Frances, even before we came over, you can tell the story, because on Friday night she missed that story because she was going down, right before the session started, she was going down to get a couple frozen bananas for a shake to watch the session with her partner. And you can tell what happened when you went and got those cold, icy cold bananas in your hand. JP and I were in my casita, we got ready. We almost, 2 minutes before Lilo was there introducing the Zoom, I said I'll quickly go to the freezer to get some frozen banana, make a shake, we can watch it. And I came back with the frozen banana. The door got locked, so I knocked. I said, open the door, can't get in. And JP from inside couldn't open, so he got locked into my room. I get locked out of my room. With cold bananas.
With cold bananas and cold wind.
And cold wind.
and nothing works because the lock got stuck. And I have the key works, the lock turns, could not open, nothing works. And and I was like, okay, what do? We have bare hands and some butter knives in my room. So we were like, try to disassemble the whole lock. And everybody is in the retreat, so we couldn't call anybody to help. It was exactly 7 p.m. And I was like, we were both, and couldn't hear each other but we can see each other because there's a glass there. But I was praying the whole time, Jesus, Spirit, what should we do? So we were both very present, but at the very end, I just said,
this was after how long? 2 hours?
Not quite 2 hours, but we did miss the whole thing. And I said in the end, with nothing worked, I just said, there's one thing we haven't tried, let's just pray together. So he stopped, and we could see each other in and out of the glass door. We just locked eyes at each other for a brief moment, and okay, done. And we go back to wiggle the lock, and the moment he touched the lock, it opened. And we have no explanation for it. And I went in, we just laughed the rest of the night. It was just a prayer.
Pray together. We always look for the form shift or the form outcome, and then nothing, and then let's pray together. So to me, that's a good teaching in the whole thing. And that's and your example showed that too. You just made up your mind to use it as an opportunity to pray. And then that gives the Spirit the chance to convince us that prayer works, that prayer is so important, that prayer is everything. And our past decision-making and problem-solving based on the past is not going to work. It's futile. In the case, even a key, no, the key doesn't work. Get a knife. Get a butter knife. No, nothing. Let's pray together. Door opens. So that's a pretty strong teaching device, but we could apply that to almost anything that we've talked about today. So I'm so glad you brought that up, though, because we want to go into the prayer. We are calling for the prayer. Yes.
We have quite some hands here still. What about Joni?
Yeah, Joni from over there in Europe.
Hi. Oh my goodness, what a weekend. I really was able to see when Eric was speaking Friday night. First, I had set my alarm and I woke up before the alarm was gone, but then I heard Spirit, look at your phone. And I saw I totally set a wrong time in my alarm, but Spirit woke me up. And so I was so glad to watch the Friday night session, because when Eric was talking, I really felt, oh my gosh, the mail I sent you, David, that was really from, time. I really can see now, I wasn't in the present moment, I was totally in the fear, in the ego fear, because within 2 months I'm coming and there is so much seeming things to do and about insurance and that kind of stuff. But I listening to Eric, I really was able to see, oh my goodness, I was compromising. I thought I had one plan B, but there were more plan Bs I saw. And then, oh gosh, ego really don't want me to go to Mexico. But then I go to the moment I really felt the prompt, no, you have to leave Holland, you have to go to Mexico. And what I discovered was I also had to let go the role that I am a citizen of Holland. I'm not a citizen from every country, no Mexico, no Holland, nothing. So it was really helpful for me, and a lot of tears because I'm really beginning to feel more and more, this is what I really, really want. I want the joy, I want happiness. And last night I had a dream, and I was driving very hard. The car was very hard, a straight on way, and there were traffic signs. And I thought, oh, I have to stop. But I wasn't able to stop. I had no control about the car, and straight on. And what I wrote down in my journal, I really have to follow my path straight on. No distractions the traffic light, no distractions from ego anymore, and go straight on. That is what you felt in June this year. That Mexico is my big step, and what Spirit wants for me. I have to trust that everything will gonna be all right. But I got a lot of scenarios from the ego. What if they are going to ask you a lot of questions when you are arriving on the airplane? Oh my goodness, you think, okay, Spirit, please help me. So yeah, and this weekend, yeah, I can see now how important it is to be in the present moment, and how I easily choose for weakness instead of the power of the mind.
Yeah.
And what I also, it is now the 7th of December, yes, and 7 days ago, my youngest son sent me WhatsApp pictures from the hospital from their firstborn baby girl. And I saw the pictures, and what came in my mind was, this is not a newborn baby child. And the day and a day later came in my mind, oh my goodness, the symbol this baby is showing me is the awakeness and the clearness of the mind, because the little girl was so bright eyes. I know only the babies with closed eyes and rimply faces, but she was so, oh wow, it really came to me. Yeah, that is the clear and awakened mind, but that's not my experience. But I have to now. It's more what I felt. I really have to accept that the mind is already awakened and clear. So, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Joni, because it's like, that's what I've discovered in these last few decades, is the prompts that I get are just what I'm to do, and then I start to notice any kind of fears, plan Bs, resistances, beliefs, thoughts that I have in my mind that would go against the prompt, that I realize that the whole trip, the whole journey is just like a stage or a backdrop to come in touch with what's going on in the mind and to be clear and cleansed. And then you start to see even the baby as a symbol, and you start to watch the signs and symbols along the way as you just follow what's in your heart, those guidances and nudges and prompts. So it's beautiful. It's like we're backing our way into heaven. It's nothing that we're doing that's going to get us there, but it's more the rinsing of our mind that occurs during the movement. And it's like John Lennon had a song that he wrote for his little son Sean called Beautiful Boy. And the very famous line that came out of that song is, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. That's it. The life of the spirit comes shining through while the other plans and prompts are coming, and it's taking us back into heaven, not by our actions, but by our blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. So thank you, Joni. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that with us. Thank you.
Well, we're coming to the end. Maybe we take one more question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I see Julie there. Which one is Julie?
Julie? There you are. Hi, Julie.
Hi. Can you hear me? Yay.
Yes.
Thank you. So wonderful to be with you two. Thanks for calling on me. Well, I started with a question, and through Courtney and Janine, you just filled it out so much. It's about being miracle-minded. And I find that when I was preparing for this, I was reading a lot of the text on time. And this one part of the text I don't understand, and I thought it might be answered, but it hasn't been completely, and I'm hoping that it will be helpful for others also, just for me to read you these two sentences and see if you can fill it out a little bit. It's funny because on yesterday morning, David, I wrote down and underlined something you said, you must be miracle-minded. And then I realized that fits into the text. So I'll just read the text and then hand it over to you and see if you can tell me. I always get so much out of what you give us, so thank you. It says, the basic decision of the miracle-minded is not to wait on time any longer than is necessary. Time can waste as well as be wasted. So if you can give us a little more about that, I would love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of us have grown up and heard lots of different things, part of our programming, and we've been told, for example, time heals all wounds. That's a common cliche phrase. And Jesus always has to correct it and really lift it up to make it accurate. Jesus says, the Holy Spirit's use of time heals all wounds. He actually comes out and he says time and space are actually neutral. They're made by the ego, and everything that the ego made, all the bodies, the planets, the mountains, the trees, time and space, black holes, quasars, everything of the cosmos was what the ego made, and basically Jesus says it's all completely neutral to the Holy Spirit. It's the purpose for which we give to time that gives it all of its meaning. And thus, when he says time can waste or be wasted, he's basically saying that if you give your mind over to the ego, this is what becomes a long and lengthy and meaningless history. It is time wasting and being wasted. It's all for mind training, and the only way that we train our mind is through the miracles, is through the Holy Spirit's purpose of forgiveness. So as we activate that forgiveness in our mind, and so many great examples, Janine with her hot flashes, going through this night after night, can't sleep, just makes a decision. The next time I wake up, I'm going to pray. That's what this is for. It's for the prayer. And then as she actively uses it for the prayer and for the miracle, then things shift. She actually can sleep all night. It's not through something that she learned in the past. It's something from actively giving her mind over to the prayer. Holy Spirit, help me. What is this for? What can I use this for? So that's really the filling it out, in the sense that when we think of time, oftentimes it seems like it's this solid thing. It's kind of like it's the context for human beings, and Jesus is saying, no, actually you are a very, very powerful mind, and you can focus your mind on the purpose that you want, and that will determine everything that you perceive. That you are not stuck in time like a fly stuck on flypaper. You are actually, time is under your control when you give it over to the Holy Spirit for miracle working. And that's something that's amazing. Time, if I allow time to be used for miracles, then it will be rearranged and reconfigured just for my awareness of, and just for my happiness. All of time and space, the characters, the figures, it sounds very quantum. I had to read a lot of quantum stuff before I could even open to some of these ideas, but that's what quantum physics is teaching, that the situation is just as the perceiver determines it to be. It's not a solid thing already there waiting for a human to walk into it, but the entire situation is always determined by the mind. And when we give it over to the Holy Spirit, we have a very holistic way of looking at the situation without breaking it apart and judging it in all those kind of ways.
It's beautiful.
Thank you, Julie. See you soon. I guess you'll be coming down in January, so we'll see you soon at La Casa. Beautiful. Wow, that goes by so fast every time we join with you. And we just love seeing all your happy faces, and we love feeling your prayers and hearing your questions, and hopefully the Spirit has shown a lot through the questions and the answers and what was spoken today, that it will start to generalize. If you just hold it in prayer, it will generalize to a lot of the questions that you had and wrote in. We always have a whole book full of questions, and there's so many people with hands raised, but we just have so much time that we can go through.
And also, I like that how we landed and end this retreat on the power of our mind and power of our prayer. I really see it in my own life, and I want you to be open that just because you hold this question and you want to give it to the Spirit, whatever your question is, your life, your days will be arranged to present you with answers. So you can live your days and lives in such a way that you look around and interpret everything with the Spirit, and it answers all the questions you have. And it's already there for you just because you have such a powerful mind. Every single thing is arranged for that. So we want to trust that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's coming to my mind too, there's a part in the Course where Jesus says, it's not that you ask for too much, you ask for far too little. And I'm thinking too of all the questions and all the presentations. Maybe also I can close here. Chris Amara, I remember your questions that you were having on Friday night, where you were saying how back in the spring you were tuned in and the guidance was there and you were flowing and you were happy, and then there came a situations where you invited an ex-husband and your mother into it, and I just want you to remember you ask for far too little. You could just say to the Holy Spirit, out of all the characters in the universe, out of all the symbols in the whole universe, what would you bring to me for my ultimate happiness? Where can I shine my light to the fullest? Take the parameters of the prayer. I know we have shared about opening to reflections and joining with mighty companions and joining with those that see your light and that see your beauty and see your deep desire and prayer of the heart. And as you just join with that and don't put any parameters on the prayer and say, convince me, Holy Spirit, I want to feel happy. I don't want to feel heavy. I don't want to feel burdened. I don't want to feel challenged and struggle. I want to learn the happy lessons of forgiveness through happiness, through joy, and then just take the parameters off the prayer. There was a part in Absence from Felicity where Jesus was working with Helen Schuckman, and Helen Schuckman was saying, she would be happy to do this scribing for Jesus, but she had some needs. And so she told Jesus that she wanted a Borgana coat, and she only wanted to pay so much money for it, and she wanted a used Borgana coat, very specific prayer. And then she also wanted green pantyhose. So Jesus directed her specifically where to get the Borgana coat used for the price that she wanted, where in New York City to get that to save time, and where to get her green pantyhose. But then Jesus said, the prayer can be much more effective if you just take the parameters off. If you had just said, take me to the best winter coat that I can have, Jesus said that's an example of taking the limits and the parameter off the prayer. And you can do the same. You're entitled to abundant miracles. You're entitled to bursting happiness, bursting joy, and all you have to do is start taking the parameters off, because, as I said, you ask for far too little. If you just open your mind up towards that joy and that happiness, and with the prayer of your heart, show me the way, oh, you'll be surprised at what comes from that, because our mind is extremely powerful, and we have focused on the power of prayer. And I find that that's part of the momentum of miracles. As we really open up, wow, the witnesses start showing up and coming at us from every angle. So thank you, Chris. Thank you for hanging in there, and I wish you nothing but bursting joy and bursting happiness. Beautiful. Okay, well, another great week. We did it under the title of the illusion of time, but it doesn't really matter what title we use. We always come down to the same trust and happiness and joy. You know, that's really what we're extending and transmitting here. So we love you all, and we're so grateful that you've joined us for this weekend. It's just been a blessing. It's been an honor. Yeah.
Thank you.